beep, beep, beep. Yep, more from the NHS. Oh, good, you can beep, 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 IIA. Plus, bum pipe for your enjoyment. It just keeps getting better. Watch, subscribe, buy me a coffee, the usual. Click like, notifications, all the doodads you have to do. I'll see you in a minute. Go on, watch.
And then let's look at some of the findings from the wider NHS staff survey. You've probably seen this stuff already. So we already know that about 1 in 20 of NHS staff identifies as LGBTQIA+. You can see on the screen at the moment the percentages of how LGBTQIA staff are more likely to be experiencing bullying and harassment and discrimination in comparison to heterosexual colleagues, and it obviously widens as we get to people that are trans and non-binary. So in terms of bullying and harassment, 23% for heterosexual staff, 32% gay and lesbian, 34% for bi, 35% for trans. Really big margins difference there. Unwanted sexual behaviour from other colleagues, 3.4% for heterosexual staff. And again, you're seeing those percentages going up to a whopping 15% for transgender staff. I think there's one more. Yes, there's one more. So, and then in terms of LGBTQIA plus staff, they're less likely to recommend the NHS as a place to work. Again, I think pretty obvious margins there. And then back to that sort of 1 in 20, 1 in 5 LGBTQIA plus people working in the NHS are considering leaving. We know from within our own network, I've had people stand down from our committee who feel like they can't continue in their roles because they don't feel safe in this organisation, in who they are, so specifically trans and non-binary folk.
Well, there we are. I'm back. So here we go. This is all about the NHS staff survey. So it's worth taking a look at this and see what Melanie is saying, because everybody seems to be so unsafe and so unhappy. I'm surprised they stay at all. So here we go. 1 in every 20 NHS staff identifies as LGBTQ+. It says LGBTQ+ there. Melanie said LGBTQ plus AI+. So is she talking about the same thing? I don't know. She adding bits in that don't exist? Who knows? God only knows. But you can see there that 1 in every 20 staff identify. You don't identify as gay or lesbian or bisexual. You are. There's no identification about it. It's got nothing to do with identity. It's a simple fact. It is an immutable characteristic, i.e., I'm a fag, pufter, shirt lifter, uphill gardener. Right? It's just me. Just part of me. Whereas, of course, the trans, non-binary, queer stuff is all, they pick that. Interesting, isn't it? So 0.4% identify as transgender, 6% prefer not to say. How do you identify as transgender? Turn up in a pair of skimpy knickers and a shirt, and then I prefer not to say. Are you trans? I prefer not to say. Surreal, isn't it? Surreal. 2.3% were bisexual. Well, make it your minds, will you? I'm kidding. 2.6% lesbian or gay. That's low. Anyway, there you go. Right, because it's fairly constant across wherever country you go, wherever you look, and across history, it's fairly constant. So this is all about they experience bullying and harassment, discrimination, and unwanted sexual behaviour compared to their heterosexual colleagues. Do they? God, what's going on in the NHS? My goodness. We have to get to slide 2 for that, don't you? The NHS staff survey 2. Bullying and harassment at work. 35% of transgender staff have had bullying or harassment at work. I find that, quite frankly, unbelievable. Right? I find it unbelievable. And of course, because it's such a small number, how many responded? We don't. It could be 8 people. Doesn't mean anything. Right? 34% of bisexual staff have. What? So in other words, they haven't said what the bullying harassment is, but that's what apparently they're getting. 23% of heterosexual staff. It looks like the LGBTQ plus I nonsense people could be more sensitive, perhaps. Is that anything to do with the microaggression training and the unconscious bias training and the decolonize the curriculums training and all the other rubbish that they're piling on them? And because they're more likely to turn up to it, because obviously it's their ideology, then they're more likely to be bullied and harassed at work in their mind rather than reality. When perhaps they're just told that they're not men when they're not women when they're men, or they're not men when they're women, because that was what they'd see as. But there was a microaggression. She didn't look at me. There was a microaggression. He wouldn't go on a date with me because he's gay. I don't believe it. It's that simple. Self-selected bloody surveys. You know, if you're in a company or an organisation, no matter how big or small it is, having a chinwag with your staff about how things are going is a good idea. These staff surveys never are. You know why? Well, because what it does is it means that you end up, if you're not careful, with the tail wagging the dog. That is, the NHS is run and should be on a basis of a hierarchy of competency and a hierarchy of leadership and power. That's the game. What this does is when you start asking the staff, everybody gets confused. Well, the staff think that you should, put tampons in the men's. Oh, well, we need to have a discussion about that. A discussion that with 10 people at the wages that are paid at the NHS costs a bloody fortune. In other words, what it does is it flattens the hierarchical structure so that it makes it more equal. Really? See it? Equity. Flatten the hierarchical structure. That's the problem the NHS has got. That's the problem it's got. Now, most staff do a brilliant job, as well as I do. And the other thing is, it's worth remembering that when we're talking about the NHS, if you're involved in clinical care, if you're a doctor, a nurse, an anaesthetist, gynecologist, whatever it may be, that you are a professional, right? And I would say that the people that work cleaning are professionals, because it's cleaning at a level that most of us wouldn't even bother with. The ability to work to detail, even in a role that is so vital as cleaning, requires a level of professionalism that most domestic cleaners wouldn't have. These are professional people that you're talking about. So what the hell is going on? That they're bullying each other? Or do you think that the LGBTQ crowd, which is the lot that Mel's talking about, are actually just simply not liking the fact that people are pushing back? I'm going with that second assumption. We then move on to the next staff survey, which is this. LGBTQ plus staff are less likely to recommend the NHS as a place to work. So 56% of transgender staff said I won't recommend it as a place to work. But yet 35% of them are being abused. Hello, make it make sense. Make it make sense. Because it doesn't make any sense. 58% of gay and lesbian staff say that they would not recommend it. But yet, 32% of them are getting abused. Right, so how many of them? So there's a good chunk of them, 44% and 42%, that would recommend the NHS. So in other words, is it only the 56 and the 58, the ones that are getting bullied? I don't know, make it make sense. 60% of bisexual staff can't make up their mind. Sorry. There'll be some annoyed bisexuals now. And 63% of heterosexual staff say they are less likely to recommend the NHS as a place. What does less likely mean? So I wonder if there was a tick box that said would not recommend, and I wonder how many said that. So 63% of heterosexual staff that responded to the survey wouldn't recommend working at the NHS. What the hell's going on? What the hell is going on? This is a failing organisation. It's a failing organisation if that's true. It's not though, is it? Because it's self-selected, and it allows for any grievance you like. And the NHS has been teaching people to have grievances for years. I know because I've seen what they're teaching. And I know because I've taught NHS staff. It used to upset the powers that be because I'd teach NHS staff the truth and they didn't like that. Because they'll take something like a psychological idea, right? And they'll just use the bit that shores up their ideology. Whereas I'd go in and do the training for the staff and there'd be 30 of them. And I'd go, right, what's missing is this. It would turn the whole thing on its head. I used to peak people at a rate of knots until they found me out. Now I've got nowhere to work. I do like to disrupt. Right, that's enough for today. Let's keep going, all right? Just keep fighting. Keep going. Keep fighting. I'm finding all this terribly exciting, and I know I shouldn't. All right, buy me a coffee, become a warrior teacher, and the usual. Like, subscribe, and share. More tomorrow.